Breanna Stewart and Nneka Agwumike are supposed to represent the collective interests of WNBA players. But what happens when those leaders also own a rival league? That's the question looming over the ongoing CBA impasse, where unrivaled founders double as union vice presidents. At the very moment the WNBPA is demanding sky-high salaries and hinting at a lockout, their leaders stand to benefit directly from any instability.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
Enter Caitlin Clark. While others blur ethical lines, she sharpens the focus. Her new broadcasting role with NBC bypasses the combative tactics of union leadership and offers a cleaner, more effective way to grow the game, by earning visibility, not manufacturing crises. And as she takes the mic next to legends like Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady, she does so without compromising anyone's trust. What Clark demonstrates is a completely different form of leadership, one rooted in clarity, consistency, and trust. While veteran players protest with inflatable rats and wage rhetorical wars, Clark steps into a room that millions already respect. Her NBC presence doesn't dilute the WNBA. It elevates its relevance in a fractured media landscape. Instead of fighting over a shrinking pie, she expands it, inviting fans in, not pushing them away. As old guard strategies fracture under scrutiny, Clark's rise offers a working model for the next era of women's basketball. Collaborative, credible, and built to last. Here we are, folks. Caitlin Clark, still technically in her rookie season, has done something that no other active WNBA player has managed to pull off, not just joining a national broadcast, but stepping directly into the spotlight of NBC's Basketball Night in America, side by side with NBA royalty. Carmelo Anthony, Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter, Reggie Miller, and now Caitlin Clark. Let that sink in. This is not a segment. It's not a feel-good special. It's a prime seat at the adult table, right in the thick of NBC's newly launched Sunday night NBA broadcast, an initiative modeled directly after the wildly successful Football Night in America format. Starting February 1st at Madison Square Garden for the Lakers Knicks game, Clark will be part of a broadcast event designed to capture millions of viewers, far beyond what the WNBA currently reaches. She's also locked in for March 29th, Knicks Thunder. That's a huge deal. So when the league's most visible rising star crosses over into the NBA's primetime ecosystem, you'd think the entire WNBA would be celebrating. Finally, one of their own has cracked into mainstream sports media in a way no one has before. Except, that's not what's happening. The backlash is already rolling in from some corners of the WNBA, particularly from veterans who've spent the past few years pushing a narrative of collective empowerment, but now seem more threatened than inspired. And the reason? Clark's success, her popularity, and her media appeal have exposed some uncomfortable truths. First off, she's attracting a type of fan the league has always claimed it wanted: young, diverse, casual sports viewers who never watched a WNBA game before Clark entered the picture. But instead of embracing that wave, certain veteran players dismissed these newcomers as bandwagon fans, writing them off as unserious or disloyal. And now, those same voices are watching Clark step into a role that not only rewards her influence, it multiplies it. Her new role with NBC also lands at the worst possible time for her critics. The WNBA Players Association is knee-deep in a highly charged collective bargaining negotiation, one that's dragging out in full public view. The union, led by high-profile players like Breanna Stewart and Nneka Agwumike, has demanded a team salary cap of $10.5 million and individual max salaries of $2.5 million. Those are massive numbers that aren't even remotely in line with the WNBA's current revenue structure. To put it bluntly, those demands are divorced from financial reality. And that might be part of the problem. Because while the league has offered a deal that includes a 70% share of net revenue, across-the-board salary increases, and top-end salaries reportedly exceeding $1 million, more than 4 times what the current cap allows, that hasn't stopped the union from rejecting it and escalating their tactics. Cue the protests outside WNBA headquarters. Cue the inflatable rats. Yes, rats. Literal, oversized blow-up rodents in front of league offices, meant to symbolize corruption or betrayal. This isn't satire. It actually happened. So while Clark is taking on a high-profile media role that expands visibility for the entire women's game, her critics are outside using props that would feel more at home in a construction union dispute than a modern sports labor negotiation. The disconnect couldn't be clearer. One side is focused on institutional integrity, audience growth, and long-term credibility. The other is leaning into theater, grievance, and a level of financial posturing that's out of sync with the league's bottom line. And then there's the conflict of interest that's quietly eroding public trust. Both Breanna Stewart and Nneka Agwamike are union vice presidents, tasked with negotiating in good faith for all players. But they're also co-founders of Unrivaled, a competing women's basketball league. That's not just inconvenient. It's a legal and ethical landmine. Holding leadership roles in the union and operating a rival league means they directly benefit if the WNBA faces instability or internal division. In any other regulated industry, that would result in forced recusal, if not outright dismissal. But here, it's gone largely unchecked. And let's be real, when the people at the bargaining table have a vested interest in weakening the product they're supposed to be protecting, it undermines everything. The strategy starts to look less like advocacy and more like sabotage. In contrast, Clark is demonstrating what actual strategic growth looks like. Her presence on NBC isn't splintering the league, it's broadening the audience. She's introducing WNBA stars to fans who've never once flipped the channel to watch a women's game. That's not dilution, that's amplification. And unlike Unrivaled, which draws talent away from the WNBA and divides media attention, Clark's new platform does the opposite. It merges markets. It links the NBA and WNBA through shared airtime, commentary, and storytelling. That's synergy, something her critics haven't been able to generate even after years in the spotlight. It's also worth noting how Clark's own path makes the current tension feel even more stark. This is the same player who was repeatedly targeted and minimized throughout her rookie season. The same player who was told she needed to earn it. The same player who, despite all the noise, just kept showing up and performing. And now, while her loudest detractors are stuck making demands that don't add up on a balance sheet, she's commanding national attention and getting paid accordingly. Her broadcast deal? It's reportedly worth more than many WNBA players make in an entire year. That's not just a flex, it's a market correction. It's what happens when star power meets business reality. The truth is, Caitlin Clark is playing a different game entirely. One rooted in results, not resentment. And if the veteran leaders of the WNBA can't, or won't, see that, they risk alienating not just the fans, but the investors, sponsors, and media partners who could be helping the league thrive. There's a lesson here. Sustainable growth doesn't come from spectacle. It comes from credibility, from building trust with the audience, from showing that the product on the court and the vision off the court are aligned. Clark is showing what that looks like in real time, and the league would be wise to follow her lead. Because if there's one thing the saga has made painfully clear, it's that you can't bully your way into relevance. You have to earn it. And Caitlin Clark has, by staying professional, staying focused, and delivering every single time the lights are on. Let's know where you stand. Is Clark's NBC role a breakthrough or a betrayal? Are the veteran protests valid, or are they missing the bigger picture? Drop your take in the comments, like the video if you're with us so far, share it with someone who's been following the drama, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next deep dive. The season may be just heating up, but this story? It's already on fire. And here's where the temperature really rises. Because while Caitlin Clark is elevating the game in front of millions on a national broadcast, the WNBA leadership seems stuck in a loop, demanding NBA-style paychecks while operating in a league that's still struggling to consistently fill arenas. That's not empowerment. That's delusion. Let's strip it down. The WNBA is offering what would be, by all metrics, a transformative new deal. 70% of net revenue, salaries that could exceed $1 million for top players, and league-wide increases across the board. It's generous. It's realistic. It's a leap forward. But the union's counterproposal? More than double the suggested salary cap and a max salary that would rival some of the NBA's role players. Where's that money supposed to come from? YouTube ad revenue? Ticket sales that haven't broken past six-figure viewership? This is where Caitlin Clark's presence is more than symbolic. It's structural. NBC didn't bring her in because she's nice or because they needed a feel-good story. They brought her in because she changes the math. Clark expands the pie. She doesn't just pull in existing fans. She creates new ones. She converts viewers who didn't even know the WNBA had a season. And that's exactly what the league needs right now. Because here's the uncomfortable truth no one at those inflatable rap protests wants to admit. Without someone like Clark, those pie-in-the-sky salary demands wouldn't even be a conversation. The league needs stars who drive engagement and growth. That's not an opinion. That's economics. And yet, instead of rallying behind the player who's quite literally helping everyone eat, a handful of veterans have made it personal. They're not just challenging the league. They're throwing jabs at Clark herself, questioning her legitimacy, downplaying her impact, acting as if the attention she brings is somehow unearned or unfair. But let's rewind the tape. Clark wasn't handed this platform. She didn't walk into the league with a media deal waiting at the door. She earned every bit of this spotlight with relentless consistency, on the court, in interviews, and across every platform she touches. Her debut WNBA season smashed attendance records. Her jersey sales went through the roof. Her games aired in primetime slots the league never had before. This wasn't marketing fluff. This was demand meeting supply. And now, as she enters the broadcast booth, she's being treated like a sellout by the very people who should be thanking her. It's absurd. Here's the irony. Clark's broadcast role actually does what the union has claimed to want for years. It grows the league's visibility. It introduces women's basketball to a larger audience. It gets more players in front of more fans. Yet instead of seeing that as a win, some of her critics are more focused on maintaining a status hierarchy that's increasingly irrelevant. That insecurity? It's loud, and it's telling, because Clark didn't wait her turn. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't bow down to a system that only rewards longevity, not impact. She brought undeniable value to the table, and now she's being paid accordingly. That's not disrespect. That's evolution. And speaking of disrespect, let's get back to Unrivaled. That competing league co-founded by Breanna Stewart and Nneka Ogwumike, two of the most prominent voices in the WNBPA's leadership. While they're publicly pushing for more money and equity in the WNBA, they're also trying to build a business that directly benefits from WNBA instability. That's not a gray area. That's a textbook conflict of interest. They're negotiating for one league while financially incentivized to undermine it. How can anyone trust the negotiation process when the people leading it are also competing with the very league they're supposed to protect? It's not just bad optics. It's a total breakdown of fiduciary duty. In any other industry, this would be a scandal. Immediate recusal, legal reviews, regulatory scrutiny. But in the WNBA, it's being waved off like it's not a big deal. Spoiler alert, it's a big deal. Because while Stewart and Ogwumike are leveraging their union roles to push increasingly unrealistic demands, Clark is building something sustainable. Her NBC role isn't just about her. It's about setting a precedent, about proving that WNBA players can be mainstream stars without leaving the league or blowing it up from the inside. Clark isn't fragmenting the ecosystem like Unrivaled. She's strengthening it, and the fans are responding. Her presence in NBA broadcasts is exposing entirely new demographics to women's basketball. People who would have never tuned into a Fever game are now Googling her stats. They're learning names like Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell because Clark brought them in. That's what growth looks like. So why are some WNBA veterans so allergic to that? Because it challenges a system where tenure matters more than traction, where control matters more than connection, where the loudest voices often mask the weakest results. But Clark didn't come to play politics. She came to play the long game. And NBC saw that. They saw a future where WNBA players aren't begging for coverage. They are the coverage. Where they're not just athletes, they're broadcasters, influencers, cultural drivers. And that future is already here. Because Clark isn't waiting for the WNBA to catch up. She's pulling it forward, whether they like it or not. And it's not just the league that needs to catch up, it's the union, too. The WNBPA has positioned itself as the vanguard of women's sports activism. But increasingly, their tactics aren't lining up with their rhetoric. You can't demand better pay while alienating the very fans who fund that pay. You can't cry foul over low viewership while sneering at the fans who finally showed up. You can't call for unity while co-founding a competitor. At some point, you have to ask, who's actually doing the work? Who's making the sport better, not just louder? Right now, the answer is Clark. And if that's uncomfortable for some, that's on them. Because while they're playing gatekeeper, she's opening doors. So here's the real question. Are you with the movement, or are you stuck in the past? Because the future of women's basketball isn't going to be built on protests and posturing. It's going to be built on performance, partnership, and platforms. Clark's got all. At this point, the split inside the WNBA isn't subtle anymore. It's a full-on culture clash. One side wants to evolve the game, build credibility, and meet the sports world where it's going. The other wants to drag it back into old patterns of entitlement, politics, and finger-pointing. And right in the middle of it all is Caitlin Clark, doing what none of them could, becoming a national phenomenon while still repping the W. But let's talk about that resentment for a second, because it's not just bubbling under the surface anymore. It's boiling over. Ever since NBC announced Clark's new role, the grumbling from WNBA veterans has been nonstop. Whether it's passive-aggressive tweets or side comments in interviews, you can feel the tension. The vibe is clear. She hasn't earned this. She hasn't paid her dues. She's getting opportunities we didn't get. And yeah, that's kind of the point. Because if you were pulling Clark-level viewership, you would be on NBC. If you were driving social engagement at the rate she does, you'd be sitting next to Carmelo Anthony too. But you didn't. She did. Not by skipping steps, but by taking the ones that actually matter now: media savvy, brand value, cultural relevance. Clark's not an exception to the rule. She's a signal that the rule book is changing. This isn't about tenure. This is about traction. And here's where things get even more uncomfortable for the Clark critics. She's not even campaigning for herself. She's not out there whining, demanding, or dragging her teammates into the mud. She's quietly delivering. One game, one interview, one broadcast at a time. She's letting her work speak louder than the noise, which is more than we can say for the players currently spending their time outside WNBA HQ with inflatable rats. Who is that really helping? The average sports fan sees that and thinks, wait, they make six figures, get charter flights, and still think they're underpaid? And then you want that fan to turn around and buy season tickets? It's a masterclass in bad PR. It sends a message that the league's biggest names aren't grateful for the growth. They're resentful of it, especially when it's not coming through them. And if you're a potential sponsor watching this unfold, what are you thinking? Probably, let's put our dollars behind someone who makes headlines for the right reasons. And once again, that leads straight to Caitlin Clark. But this goes beyond individual optics. This is about who gets to define the next chapter of women's basketball. For years, the WNBPA has been painting itself as the voice of progress. And in many ways it was. From fighting for better travel standards to pushing for maternity benefits, the union has done real, meaningful work. But somewhere along the way, that mission got hijacked by something else: control. Control over the narrative. Control over who gets endorsed. Control over which players deserve media attention. And when Clark came along, refusing to play that game, yet winning the public without it, it threw that control into chaos. Because let's be honest, Clark didn't ask for this spotlight. The public gave it to her. The networks gave it to her. The numbers backed it up. She just kept doing what she's always done: ball out, show up, and stay professional. That's what's made her impossible to ignore. So when NBC handed her a mic, it wasn't some affirmative action hire. It was a business decision. She brings the audience. She brings the energy. She brings the future. And NBC isn't in the charity business. They're in the ratings business. And they see what everyone else is finally starting to realize. Clark is the ratings. Meanwhile, the union is chasing headlines with protest props and dragging the league into increasingly theatrical negotiations. And let's not sugarcoat it. Those negotiations aren't landing well. Asking for a $10.5 million salary cap and $2.5 million individual max contracts is a bold ask if you're bringing in NBA revenue. But the WNBA's financials don't support it. Not even close. That's not an opinion. It's math. The league's own proposal is already aggressive, with a 70% revenue share and top salaries over $1 million. That's a monumental jump. And still, it wasn't enough for the union leaders, who, again, are also building their own rival league. Let's linger there for a moment, because Unrivaled is not some distant side hustle. It's a direct competitor. And the people negotiating the WNBA's labor terms are simultaneously trying to make that competitor succeed. How do you serve both interests at once? You can't. That dual loyalty shreds trust. Players looking to their leadership for guidance now have to wonder, am I being represented or recruited? Caitlin Clark doesn't have that problem. Her path is simple. Stay in the league, grow the audience, and make the game bigger for everyone. She's not hedging bets. She's not starting her own thing on the side. She's committing to the institution and elevating it. And that's what sets her apart. She's not just redefining what success looks like. She's redefining how you achieve it. Not with noise, but with substance. Not with demands, but with results. That's the irony in all this. Clark is actually the best thing that's happened to the WNBA in years. She's the bridge between niche and mainstream, between women's basketball and casual fans, between underdog status and undeniable presence. And instead of embracing that, some of the league's most powerful voices are trying to minimize her, undercut her, diminish the very thing they've always said they wanted: more attention, more money, more legitimacy. Well, it's here, but it didn't come from their roadmap. It came from a new one, a roadmap that doesn't demand fans do better. It gives them better storytelling, better access, better talent on bigger stages. That's what Clark represents. And if the WNBA has any sense, they'll stop resisting that wave and ride it instead. Because this isn't just about one player. This is about what the future of women's basketball looks like. And who gets to lead it? Right now, it's not a union president or a 10-year vet. It's the rookie in the NBC studio, sitting next to NBA icons, introducing a new generation to a game that deserves their attention. So where do we go from here? That's the question the league has to answer, and soon. Do they double down on the division? Or do they recognize that Clark's rise is a gift, not a threat? Let us know what you think in the comments. Is this the turning point the WNBA needed? Are the union's tactics doing more harm than good? Hit that like button if you're following the drama. Share this with someone who needs to catch up, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in the biggest shakeup women's basketball has ever seen. Because the court's not the only place where this game is being played, and the stakes just keep getting higher.